What if I told you that your hatred for the other side isn't moral virtue? It's just a chemical addiction to dopamine. You aren't debating ideas, you are protecting your tribe. We tell ourselves that we live in a secular age, but the human brain does not tolerate a vacuum. When Nietzsche declared that God is dead, he wasn't celebrating. He was issuing a warning. He feared that without a sacred structure, we would descend into nihilism. But we didn't choose nihilism. We chose a replacement. We didn't destroy the altar. We simply moved it to politics. Check the tension in your chest when you open your phone. That isn't stress about taxes or policy. It is a spiritual crisis. We have turned elections into the apocalypse and opposing voters into heretics. The exhaustion you feel isn't news fatigue. It is the spiritual burnout of living in a permanent holy war. How did we get here? To understand this, we must look at the mechanics of the mind. In his seminal work, The Righteous Mind, social psychologist Jonathan Haidt explains that our moral intuitions come first, and our strategic reasoning comes second. We don't use logic to find the truth, we use logic to defend what we already feel is true. This is where the nuance dies. When politics becomes your identity, your brain engages in what is known as identity fusion. The line between what I think and who I am dissolves. Therefore, a challenge to your political leader is processed by your brain not as a disagreement, but as a physical threat to your ego. You begin to lose the ability to see the color gray. You retreat into the comfort of binary thinking, good versus evil, us versus them. It is a voluntary blindness. You trade the complexity of the real world for the safety of a dogma. And there is a chemical hook here. When you see your enemy fail, or when you join a digital mob to shame an outsider, your brain releases dopamine. It is the visceral pleasure of tribal belonging. You mistake this shared hatred for moral virtue. But deep down, there is a loneliness in this. The loneliness of never being able to say, I'm not sure, or maybe they have a point, for fear of being excommunicated by your own congregation. To find the root of this behavior, we have to go back, way back. We must look at the backstory of our biology. For 99% of human history, we lived in small bands of roughly 150 people, the famous Dunbar's number. In the Pleistocene savanna, isolation meant death. If you were cast out of the tribe, you didn't just lose your friends, you lost your life. Therefore, conformity wasn't a choice. It was a survival mechanism. Today, you live in a democracy of millions, but you're walking around with a brain wired for a tribe of 150. When you see a dissenting opinion on social media, your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, fires as if you are being hunted. The panic you feel is atavistic. It is the ancient fear of exile. This is why we seek messiahs. Evolutionary psychology suggests we have a natural propensity to look for a prestige leader or a dominance leader to coordinate the group in times of danger. We project onto politicians the qualities of the primal father or the savior. We want them to be omnipotent because if they are strong, we are safe. As the saying goes, the instinct for survival has hijacked the logic. What was once a biological necessity for coordinating a hunt has become a cognitive error that leads us to defend corruption, incompetence, or cruelty, simply because the perpetrator wears our tribe's colors. Living this way comes at a terrible internal cost. It creates a labyrinth of cognitive dissonance. This is the mental stress experienced when you hold two contradictory beliefs. You know logically that your messiah lied. You saw it. But to admit it would be to shatter your identity and risk tribal expulsion. So you engage in exhausting mental gymnastics. You become the lawyer for the defense. You tell yourself, he didn't mean it, or it was taken out of context, or the darkest justification of all, the other side is worse. This is the dark side of cognitive empathy. You become so fixated on the war that you begin to justify the unjustifiable. This is what is known as moral decoupling, separating a leader's immoral actions from their performance because we need to win. You adopt the role of the soldier. You feel an invisible obligation to preach the gospel of your ideology at dinner parties, ruining relationships to score points in a game that never ends. You live in a deferred life, believing that happiness and peace will only arrive after the final political victory. But that victory never comes. There's always a new enemy. Inside your skull, a specific physiological process is taking place. It is the battle between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. Modern political campaigning is designed to hack the system. It is engineered to keep your amygdala, the alarm bell, ringing constantly. When you're afraid or angry, blood flow actually shifts away from the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for complex reasoning, impulse control, and empathy. Essentially, the political religion makes us cognitively dumber. It keeps us in a state of fight or flight. This generates a specific type of anxiety, the anxiety of the lack of control. To soothe this, we engage in the fallacy of the savior. We regress to a childlike state, hoping a powerful figure will fix the chaos. As the cultural anthropologist Ernest Becker argued in The Denial of Death, we build immortality projects, ideologies and causes that give us a sense of significance in a terrifying universe. We use politics to manage our terror of death and insignificance. But here's the crucial lesson: you must learn political secularism. You must learn that leaders are merely public employees. They are fallible, flawed mammals, not deities. How do we break the spell? The turn comes when we move from control to acceptance. You must deconstruct the idol. You have to realize that your hyper-political consciousness is an unconscious attempt to feel safe. You think that if you worry enough, if you post enough, you can control the future. You cannot. The invitation here is to complexity. True maturity is accepting that the enemy is also driven by fear, biology, and the desire to protect their family. It is realizing that the world is not a comic book struggle between Avengers and villains. It is a tragedy of conflicting interests. Healing begins when you stop needing your political leader to be your priest or your father. When you can look at the chaos of the world and say, "I will do my part, but I will not surrender my soul to this," you begin to wake up. This leads to a shift in perspective. You move from being a devotee to being a witness. You discover the power of selective indifference. This is not apathy, it is the protection of your inner sanctuary. You realize you don't need a passionate opinion on every trending topic. You detach your self-worth from the ballot box. The peace comes not from your side winning an election, but from the confidence that you can handle the uncertainty of the world without a shepherd. You rediscover the simplicity of life outside the ideological bubble. You remember that art, nature, friendship, and love exist independently of who sits in the presidential chair. Let's be clear. There is nothing wrong with you for wanting to belong. We are social creatures who crave purpose. But politics is too small a container for the human spirit. Your new objective is not to withdraw from society, but to engage with it as a free agent, not a cult member. The people who truly change the world are not the fanatics. They are the ones who can see the humanity in their adversaries and the flaws in their allies. As we close, remember this. Politics is a necessary tool for organizing resources, but it is a terrible religion. It offers no forgiveness, no grace, and no true salvation. Use the tool, vote, participate, but do not worship the hammer. Do not kneel at the altar of power. Keep your sanctuary sacred. Because in the end, the only kingdom that truly matters is the one you build within yourself.